Hundreds of years ago, humanity had completely exhausted the planet's resources, leading to the total degradation of civilization. The world's best scientists had taken it upon themselves to save the dying planet. They had discovered a renewable energy source, but the greatest danger still remained: humanity itself. Differences among people had led to divisions between the best and the worst. In response, it had been decided that humans must be improved as a species. On their 16th birthday, everyone would undergo a mandatory procedure that made them physically perfect. No one would ever again need to envy others or prove their superiority. Tally was one of those still waiting for that day. For now, she was referred to as an ugly. However, she had the opportunity to see what she would look like after the transformation. She was allowed to choose her eye color and skin quality. That evening, Tally had snuck onto a bridge where her friend Paris was already waiting. Together, they had watched a party in the City of the Beautiful, envying those who were already transformed. Paris was 3 months older than Tally and would be undergoing the operation the very next day. He would then move to the city. Tally feared that Paris might forget about her, but he had assured her she would always be his squints, and he would always be her nose. He had arranged to meet her again in a month. The next day, the students had gathered in the main hall to greet those whose time had come. Dr. Cable had spoken about all the advantages of being beautiful and had called forward the future beauties. Paris had said goodbye to Tally. A girl named Shay, sitting beside Tally, had noticed their interaction. That evening, Tally had returned to her room and remembered how she and Paris had first met when they arrived at school. He had called himself Nose, and she had called herself Squints. One day Paris had hit his hand, and Tally had intentionally cut her palm. From that moment on, they had shared a mark of ugliness, a scar on their palms, and a belief that they were perfect for each other. The next morning in class, Tally had talked about the white tiger orchid, a plant that supplied energy to the cities and decorated the fields. That evening, she had undergone the mandatory scan for her future transformation. She had chosen gold for her eye color and dreamed of reuniting with Paris, from whom she had heard no news. When the arranged day of their meeting arrived, Tally had snuck onto the bridge, but Paris was not there. Determined, she had decided to sneak into the City of Joy. She had reached the outskirts, where a party was in full swing. Suddenly, a mask had fallen from above, allowing its wearer to change clothing. Tally had put it on, selected a dress, and ventured into the dazzling streets filled with lights, music, and celebration. By some miracle, she had found Paris. But he had barely recognized her. Even the scar on his hand was gone, despite his earlier promise never to remove it. It had turned out that after the transformation, an ugly's life changed completely. Eternal friendship oaths no longer held meaning. Tally had removed the mask to remind him of who she was, but had instantly become an unwanted presence. She had run, grabbing a rescue vest on the way, and realizing she was about to be caught, she had jumped from a skyscraper. The vest had saved her life, and she had made it back to the bridge. Just as she was about to be caught, Shay had appeared on a hoverboard and rescued her. The girls had instantly felt a kindred connection. Tally had shown Shay how to sneak into the locked kitchen and had shared her disappointment about the meeting with Paris. One day, Shay had suggested that Tally learn to ride the hoverboard and had given her a forbidden book. Tally had learned that Shay had told her friends about her skyscraper jump, and now she was a heroine on the entire campus, something that could risk her being denied the operation. Nonetheless, she had continued training and mastered the hoverboard. Later, the girls had discussed beauty, and unexpectedly, Shay had revealed that she didn't want to change at all. She had taken Tally to a training ground and chosen the most difficult track to showcase her skills. After riding, Tally had returned the book, having enjoyed its portrayal of freedom, natural seasons, and relationships. Shay had then suggested they refuse the operation and escape to a place called the Smoke, where people lived freely. She had taken Tally to the edge of school grounds. After leaving their tracking rings on a branch, the girls had flown into the wildlands. They had crossed a river and arrived at the ruins of an old city. Shay had shown Tally the remnants of a roller coaster and taken her to a tall building where they could call her friends in the outside world by lighting a signal fire. Shay had explained that outside people worked for themselves, loved, had children, and even grew old. Everything was like in the book they had read. Shay had originally planned to escape with her friend David, but had changed her mind when she saw Tally on the bridge and had gone to rescue her. She had expressed her desire to read books and have hobbies because once someone underwent the operation, they no longer chose how to live. Tally hadn't understood. She had dreamed of being beautiful her entire life. So Shay had left her with a coded path to the Smoke and departed with David, whose signal fire lit up on the neighboring rooftop. Tally had returned to the city, and soon the day of her transformation had arrived. But instead of the operation, she had been taken to Dr. Cable, who knew about her friendship with the missing Shay. Cable had insisted that David was holding Shay against her will and brainwashing her. Only after Tally found and returned Shay would she be allowed to become beautiful. Distressed, Tally had returned to her room. Paris had visited her and advised that she do as Dr. Cable asked. It was the only way they could be together. Tally had agreed. Dr. Cable had told her that the residents of the Smoke were planning to destroy the city and had developed a weapon that Tally needed to find and neutralize. She had been given a pendant to activate upon locating the weapon. Following Shay's instructions, Tally had reached the ruined roller coaster and ridden it to an old railroad track. She had camped in the forest, lit a fire, and had unexpectedly found charm in nature. She had then climbed a steep cliff and crossed ruins on her hoverboard. Her last stop had been a white sea of orchids, where she had settled for the night. Meanwhile, Dr. Cable had contacted Paris and offered to enhance him further. That night, Tally had awakened to find the orchids burning. Just as she had been about to lose consciousness, David had found her. He had checked her over, discarded a visible transmitter but ignored the pendant, which had not yet been activated. He had taken her with him. However, the pendant's tracker had already informed Dr. Cable that Tally was in the right place. The next morning, David had brought her to the Smoke, where she had reunited with Shay. The residents had found it strange that she had made it alone. Tally had told Shay she was worried and believed she should return to the city. But Shay had no intention of doing so, and asked Tally to take a closer look at their way of life. The next day, Tally had encountered a group of young people preparing for an expedition. They had explained that the orchids were toxic and drained nutrients from the soil. To save the planet, they had to burn them. David had invited her to join the mission aboard an ancient, modified helicopter. From above, they had seen the destruction caused by the orchids. Shay had set the plants on fire, and flames had revealed figures walking unharmed. Suddenly, the helicopter had shaken, and Shay had fallen. Tally had immediately jumped after her and caught her, just as a figure in a blue suit had approached. A rope had been thrown from the helicopter, and both girls had been pulled to safety. Later, they had discussed the strange event, confused as to how the scouts had found them. Tally had felt torn. After getting to know the Smoke's people, her perspective had changed. Everyone worked, but money wasn't used. The elderly contributed in their own way. Most importantly, the people had chosen to be there. They melted old iron to make useful things. When Tally had asked about weapons, Shay had simply shrugged. Tally had joined the work. Though it had been hard, she had enjoyed it. That evening, everyone had gathered around campfires and eaten natural food. David had warned them that scouts had been spotted. The city hadn't stopped pursuing them. While the Smoke sought harmony with nature, the city had perfected controlling people. By focusing on appearance, they had erased curiosity, learning, and choice. The next day, David had taught Tally to shoot a bow, and had noticed the calluses on her hands. He had given her his gloves as a gift. Soon after, they had encountered flamethrowers again. This time, they were not beauties, but fast and strong men. Shay had noticed the gloves and explained that in their world, a gift meant someone cared. One day, Tally had asked David about the supposed weapons. He had taken her to his parents. They had once been plastic surgeons and explained that the beauty procedures were not as safe as believed. Some patients had died. David's father had discovered changes in the brains of the transformed, revealing a deliberate impairment that caused false happiness. When Cable had learned they had uncovered the secret, she had confiscated their work and removed them from duty. They had fled and joined a community that had given them a medicine to stay sane. They had been working ever since to complete a cure, but one crucial component was still in the city. The serum was the true weapon. That night, Tally had reflected on everything. She had taken off the pendant and thrown it into the fire, unknowingly activating it. When she told David, he had reassured her. He had told her she was beautiful and kissed her. The next morning, the city had attacked. Men in blue suits had captured the Smoke's residents in nets. Tally and David had watched from a distance. Cable had interrogated David's parents, and when they refused to talk, she had ordered Paris to kill David's father. Paris had obeyed. David and his mother had cried over the body. Paris had seen Tally but hadn't touched her. Cable had thanked Tally for her cooperation, revealing her true mission. Shay had expressed her disgust. David's mother had secretly slipped the serum vial into his pocket. Tally had escaped, set David's house on fire, and caused chaos. David had fled to the forest. Tally had shot her pursuer with a bow and joined him. The city's troops had taken the Smoke's residents away. Later, Tally had confessed to David that she hadn't known the full truth. She wanted to help fix her mistake. She had taken him to the school and introduced him to Shay's friends. Together, they had started a rebellion, spray painting smoke forever above the city to create a distraction. Taking advantage of the chaos, Tally and David had sneaked into the laboratory. They had freed the residents but found that Shay had already been operated on. Rushing to stop it, they had arrived too late. Shay now loved being beautiful. Just then, Paris and Cable had arrived. They had urged everyone to choose their side. All three had stepped into the transformation booths. But a helicopter had flown overhead, and David's friend had used a flamethrower to melt the glass. The system had collapsed. Tally had pulled Shay out while David's mother had found the needed component. They had escaped to the roof but had been stopped by Paris. Tally had tried to remind him of their friendship. David, remembering his father's death, had attacked him. During the fight, Paris had dangled over a waterway. He had recognized Tally, but then slipped and fallen. David had led Tally away. Later, in the ruins of the ancient city, the group had gathered. David's mother had retrieved the missing component and pulled the vial from his pocket. The serum was complete. Shay had refused to take it. She loved being beautiful. So Tally had volunteered. She would return to the city, undergo the procedure, and then become the test subject. Sometime later, the now beautiful Tally admired the city. When asked by the system, she had assured it she was completely happy being perfect. The movie, however, had raised more questions than answers. The city's motivation remained unclear as the beauties produced nothing but self-admiration. The danger of the smoke was not fully explained. Still, the visuals had allowed viewers to enjoy the beauty, if not the logic of the story. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next movie breakdown. Want more? Check out our recap of similar movie right here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.